Let's start with a surprising, central truth about downsizing later in life. That final relocation, what many call the last move, it's an incredibly overwhelming emotional event, mainly because it forces you to confront the final narrative of your life. You might think, oh, it's just about lifting boxes, hiring movers, right? But there's this deep, often unspoken dread that comes along with it. So let's dive into this, because really understanding what's going on is the first step to navigating it with grace and a real sense of control. This quote, this really just hits the nail on the head, doesn't it? And it is not an exaggeration. Think about every other move you've ever made. For a new job, a bigger house for the kids, a change of scenery. Every single one of those was about opening a new chapter. It was about expansion, about possibilities. This move, though, is fundamentally different. It's about closing the book on a huge part of your life. So in this explainer, we're going to peel back the layers on exactly why this specific move carries so much psychological weight. And more importantly, we'll lay out a clear, structured way to manage that emotional inventory so you can move forward with a feeling of peace and purpose. All right, let's get right into that hidden emotional truth. We all know moving is a pain. The logistics, the chaos, the sheer physical exhaustion, that's a given. But the dread that comes with the last move, it goes so much deeper than just a messy house. It's a totally unique kind of stress, one that has nothing to do with packing tape or finding the right movers. It's really about what the process forces you to unpack inside yourself. It's an emotional weight that can feel absolutely immense. And honestly, it often catches people completely by surprise, leaving them feeling stuck or paralyzed without really knowing why. So what is it that makes this move so profoundly different from every other one you've ever been through? It's not just about having a little less energy than you did when you were 30. There's some really unique psychological things at play here that set this transition apart, and they turn what should be a simple task into this major life event that can feel, well, deeply unsettling. Let's explore the very core of that difference, the reason this feels less like a simple move and more like a reckoning. Yeah, this really says it all. The boxes, they're just a decoy. The real work, the true heavy lifting, is happening inside your head and your heart. This move acts as an irreversible psychological bookend. It signifies the end of an era. The era of raising your family in that house, of a certain career, of the specific role you played for your friends and your loved ones. It forces you to look at your past self, the person you were in that home, and just acknowledge that that chapter is now closing. And there's a finality to it that previous moves just never, ever had. So this brings us to a really key concept, the Memory Externalization Hub. Now, I know that sounds a little academic, so let's break it down. Externalization is just a fancy word for taking something internal, like our memories, our sense of who we are, our family stories, and putting them out into our physical surroundings. For decades, your home has been this living, breathing archive. It's not just four walls and a roof, it's the physical container for your life story. That worn spot on the carpet where the kids always played, the pencil marks on the doorframe charting their height, the exact way the morning light hits the kitchen counter. These aren't just little details, they're triggers for entire chapters of your life. So look on this central hub, it's a profound structural, emotional change. It's almost like your personal historian is retiring and you're left to sort through the entire library all by yourself. This comparison here does a great job of showing the two parallel tracks of stress you're on. Over on the left, you've got the logistical stuff. It's tangible, it's visible. You can make lists, you can hire movers, you can pack boxes, you can solve it. But on the right, that's where you have this huge, often invisible emotional stress. While you're physically packing an object, you're emotionally going through a painful life review. While you're on the phone hiring movers, you're grieving the loss of the family center. And while you're planning all the logistics, you're subconsciously confronting your entire legacy. It's the second column, the emotional work, that can just become completely overwhelming and bring the entire process to a screeching halt if you don't acknowledge it and manage it with real intention. Okay, so now that we understand just how deep this emotional weight is, we have to reframe the whole experience. This is not just a move. It's not just getting rid of stuff. It is something so much more significant, and giving it the right name is the first step toward handling it. This is a process that requires a totally different kind of strength, a different kind of plan, and you know what? A whole lot of self-compassion. Let's just pause on this question for a second. If it's not really about the boxes, and it's not just about changing your address, what is this really all about? What's the core experience you're going through when you're sorting through a lifetime of possessions and memories and identities? The answer to that question is the key that unlocks a healthier, more peaceful way through all of this. And here it is. This is the crucial point. The last move is a grieving process. It's grief for the loss of that memory hub we just talked about, grief for the end of the family gathering place, grief for your past self and the roles you once lived in so fully. Just acknowledging this is incredibly powerful. It validates the sadness, the anxiety, that feeling of being completely overwhelmed. It gives you permission to feel these things, because what you're experiencing is a very real, legitimate form of loss. You are not just being emotional, you are grieving. And grief needs to be processed, not just pushed aside. So, if the problem is that these two kinds of stress, the logistical and the emotional, are all tangled up in this paralyzing knot, then the solution has to be about untangling them. The fundamental strategy, the big idea, is to intentionally separate the emotional work from the logistical work. Think about it. You can't effectively pack a box and grieve a cherished memory at the exact same time. Trying to do both at once just leads to burnout, decision fatigue, and feeling completely stuck. The key is to create two different workflows, two different mindsets for two very, very different tasks. And the core tactic for doing that is this: separate the memory from the object. An object is just a thing, but the story, the feeling, the memory that's attached to it, that's what's priceless. The goal is to find a way to secure the story before you make a decision about what to do with the physical item. When you do this, you free yourself up. You prevent that emotional burnout we were just talking about, because you're no longer trying to make this huge permanent decision about a memory while you're just trying to empty a closet. This approach makes sure that you, not your overwhelming emotions, are in control. You get to maintain your autonomy. Okay, so understanding this principle is one thing, but putting it into practice is something else entirely. How do you actually do this? How do you separate a memory from an object in a way that's tangible and meaningful? Well, we need a process. We need a safe, effective, and actionable solution. What you need is a ritual, a structured practice that lets you honor your memories without being buried by the weight of all the physical things that trigger them. So here are the 3 practical, structured steps that really form the foundation for this whole journey. First, scheduling dedicated memory sessions. Second, implementing what we're going to call the memory transfer ritual. And third, consciously defining your new home base. Together, these steps give you a roadmap to help you move through this with intention, with dignity, and with a real sense of control. So let's look at each one a little more closely. Step 1 is absolutely critical. You literally get out a calendar and you schedule memory sessions. This is time that is completely separate from packing time. This is not when you have boxes and tape out. This is when you might sit down with a cup of tea and a box of old photos, or just one specific beloved item, and you just allow yourself the space to feel the emotions, to remember, to laugh, to cry, to grieve. By quarantining this emotional work into its own dedicated time slot, you stop it from derailing the logistical work. Packing time is for packing. Memory time is for remembering. That separation is your greatest defense against feeling totally overwhelmed. Step 2 is really the heart of the whole process, the memory transfer ritual. This is how you physically separate the memory from the object. For a meaningful item you know you can't take with you, you perform this really simple ritual. You take a clear photograph of it, and then you document its story. You can write it down in a notebook, or, and this is even easier, just turn on the voice recorder on your phone and talk about it. What is this thing? Where did it come from? What does it really mean to you? By doing this, you're transferring that precious, intangible memory from the physical object into a secure digital or written format. You've kept the story, now you can let the object go with peace. And finally, step 3, which is all about looking to the future. It is so crucial that this process isn't only about looking back. You also have to build a positive anchor for the life you're moving toward. So as soon as you move into your new space, you intentionally define a new home base. This could be a comfy chair by a window for reading, a small desk for a new hobby you want to start, or a specific corner you set up just for video calls with the grandkids. Designate an area for new, future-focused activities. This simple act sends a really powerful psychological signal to your brain that this new place is not just an ending, but a vibrant new beginning. You know, when you follow these steps, it shifts the tone of the entire process. It moves away from a story of just grief and loss and towards something so much more empowering. This isn't just some difficult process you have to suffer through. It's a process you can consciously direct. It's a real opportunity to make deliberate choices about your future, and that absolutely includes your emotional well-being. It's all about choosing your own emotional sovereignty. I want you to really let this idea sink in for a moment. What you're doing is not just getting rid of stuff. You are engaging in an act of intentional curation. You are becoming the curator of your own life story. And this act of consciously choosing what to keep, what stories to preserve, and what to let go of
It's a powerful way of safeguarding your emotional sovereignty. It means that you are in charge of your emotional state. You get to decide what comes with you into your next chapter, both physically and emotionally.
And when you start to approach it this way, the entire narrative just flips. The move is no longer defined by a sense of loss. Instead, it becomes a strategic simplification. You're actively and intelligently designing a lighter, more focused, and more peaceful life for yourself. You're clearing away the clutter, both the physical and the emotional stuff, to make space for what truly matters to you now and for the years ahead. It's a proactive approach that leads directly to a much better way of living. So, we've covered the why, the what, and the how. We've gone from understanding the profound emotional weight of this journey to a set of practical, empowering steps. Now, let's bring it all together into one single distilled lesson and a clear, gentle call to action that you can take, maybe even today. If you take only one thing away from this whole explainer, please let it be this. This is the golden rule that will keep you from feeling paralyzed and stuck. The emotional work, the remembering, the grieving, the storytelling must be separated from the logistical work of sorting and packing. Create 2 columns in your brain and on your calendar. This separation is your single most powerful tool for getting through this with your sanity and your spirit intact. And with that in mind, I have a challenge for you, a very gentle challenge. I want you to just think of one thing, one single item in your home that is packed with sentiment. Not a whole box, not an entire room, just one thing. Maybe it's a chipped teacup from your grandmother, a worn-out old book, a piece of costume jewelry. Just pick one single item to start with.
And with that one item, I invite you to commit to doing that memory transfer ritual we talked about. Before you even think about whether to keep it or donate it or give it away, just document its story. Take a photo and then write down its history, or even better, record yourself telling its story out loud. This single act will show you just how powerful this process is. It kicks off that crucial transfer of meaning and gives you an immediate feeling of control and of peace.
Look, it's so important to remember that the stress and the powerful emotions you feel during this process are completely real and completely valid. This final move is a significant life event, and it should be managed with a tremendous amount of patience and a whole lot of self-compassion. So please, give yourself the grace to move through it at a pace that feels right for you. There is no prize for finishing first. The only goal is to finish with your well-being intact. As you navigate this journey, just keep coming back to that single most helpful tool we discussed, the power of the memory transfer ritual. It truly is your best technique for securing the stories that matter most to you, and for easing that heavy feeling of emotional overwhelm. It allows you to honor your past without being trapped by it, ensuring your legacy is preserved in a way that is light, accessible, and ready to be shared. And ultimately, remember this final, profound act of curation, it is a choice. By thoughtfully and intentionally simplifying your life, you are choosing peace. You are choosing to enter your next chapter with clarity, with lightness, and with calm. You are choosing emotional sovereignty for all the years ahead. And that is a powerful, hopeful, and deeply personal final gift to yourself.